Good afternoon and welcome to Associated Black Charities Equity at Work webinar, where we talk about all the things, workplace discrimination, all the ways that Black professionals are sometimes denied access and opportunity in the workplace. I'm so happy to be joining you all today. My name is Chrissy Thornton. I am the president and CEO of Associated Black Charities. So welcome. As we get started, we encourage you to use the chat to share your experiences, to put some questions in the chat for our wonderful panelists today. Today, we are talking about recruiting Black talent, but never advancing it. We know that many organizations proudly promote their commitment to diversity. They celebrate hiring Black professionals. They feature diverse faces in their recruitment materials. They even highlight representation in entry-level and mid-level roles. But hiring Black talent is not the same as advancing Black talent. Too often, Black employees are welcomed into organizations, but not given the sponsorship, the visibility, the resources, or the decision-making opportunities needed to grow their careers. This session and this conversation will examine what happens when organizations focus on recruitment without building clear, equitable pathways for advancement. We'll also talk a little bit about the personal and professional toll of stalled advancement, including burnout, disengagement, self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, decreased job satisfaction, and the difficult decision many Black workers face to leave organizations in search of growth elsewhere. Because hiring Black talent is not equity. Creating opportunities for Black talent to advance, influence, and lead is. Today, I am so excited that we have with us some wonderful panelists, and I'm excited to welcome them on screen with me at this time. Welcome, welcome. Wonderful. We have Terrence
Thank
Clark
you.
and Ryan Murray. We're going to start with Terrence. Please introduce yourself. Tell us as much as you want us to know, and tell us
Yes.
a little bit about why this conversation was so important for you to join today.
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terrence Clark. I serve as the Associate Director of Career Pathways at CivicWorks, which is the Center for Sustainable Careers in Baltimore. For the past several years, I've had the privilege of helping individuals, many of who are Black job seekers, prepare for careers in utility infrastructure, construction, and renewable energy. Um, I like to think that my work isn't just about helping people find employment. It's about helping them build careers that help lead to economic mobility and long-term success. Uh, One thing that I've learned is that getting someone through the door is only the beginning. The real measure of, I believe, of equity is whether people have access to advancement, leadership opportunities, mentorships, and decision-making roles. So that's why I'm excited to be a part of today's conversation.
Thank you so much. And Ryan, welcome.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. Certainly, commendations to you, Mrs. Thornton, for the tremendous work that you and the Organization of Associated Black Charities continues to do. I know we've had partnerships within the organizations for MCCR for a while now. So for me, I'm very thankful to be a part of this conversation. I think it is a pivotal conversation to have, especially at this time. And for me, I serve as an enforcement supervisor with the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. So I've spent over the last 10 years in state government. So I've seen it on this side of things. I think the great pairing with my colleague on the panel today, as he just expressed some of his experience, my side will be on what it would be in terms of investigating some of the complaints that come out of some of these issues. So I'm very thankful to be on and to contribute to the panel today.
Thank you so much. So we talk all the time about the disparities in the workplace. We talk about pay disparity. We talk about hiring and interviewing challenges that Black professionals face. So today, as we talk about what it means for organizations to demonstrate a commitment to recruiting Black people into the organization, but not necessarily giving us the resources and the opportunities to advance in those careers. It's an important conversation because, as we know, 2020, the murder of George Floyd, a lot of corporations made what some would say are performative commitments to equity in the workplace. What do you think about that? What happened then and what's changed since then to lead us to this conversation today?
I'll go first. I think what you raised is a very important point. I think in speaking about that with the George Floyd incident, that is one of the major corporations who got involved in that conversation as it relates to DEI, equity, and inclusion. I think at face value, it looks great, right? To make the commitments to, assume certain positions when a crisis happens in our society. But then when we talk about how it looks within the internal parts of your organization or corporation, I think there's a different conversation. In particular, corporations such as those, right? We see the hiring piece of it, as you explained, right? The frontline employees that we see, they look like us when we go to our respective locations, your Targets, your Walmarts, your Amazons. You see people that look like us, but as you ascend, you start to see less and less of us, right? And so when we talk about that in terms of those corporations or different folks positioning themselves when a crisis hits, I think it's important to think about that even on an internal level, because when we talk about how to actually influence those organizations to actually help to impact communities such as ours that are impacted by events such as George Floyd here in Baltimore, many corporations that are here after the event such as Freddie Gray and so many others, how we actually help to support communities that are dealing with crises like those, especially when we are significantly the leaders in consuming their products. I think it's important to have individuals within the organization who can actually speak to that, not just work in the frontline aspect, but actually have voices of influence within those actual corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with that. I'll throw some numbers out there for you. Black employees represent roughly what 13% of the U.S. workforce, and only 9% of that have management positions, and only 4 to 5% have senior leadership positions. So that's an issue. Uh, with following up with Ryan said, and we are so much on the front line, and of course with the current administration trying to roll back the diversity, equity, inclusion. It's very important that we recognize the importance that we have at these corporations and what we as far as being hired and also consuming as well too, because we are the main consumers of products within the United States. So I think it's very important that the light is shined. We are more educated now, but especially Black women are definitely really doing it as far as being more educated and getting more opportunities with management roles. But it's not enough. We need to do the more work with it. So I definitely agree with Ryan and we have more work to do.
Yeah. It's interesting. You both brought up something that I think about a long time. It's like, what do the front-facing workers look like? And I remember someone
Mhm.
telling me, a mentor a while back, that like the receptionist is always going to be a Black person and professional,
Yes.
right? Because that's where you
Mhm.
sit someone to give the premise and the perception of equity when it doesn't necessarily exist. A lot of times the community relations person, the development professional, those people who have that external reach are going to be people of color. But there is usually a ceiling that doesn't allow them to ascend. So let's talk about what it really is. We often don't name what it is. It
Mhm.
is a refusal to share power in the workplace,
Yes.
right? And so a lot of times that refusal is shielded with language like pipelines and readiness and whether people are a fit or timing or whether you have enough experience. I'll never forget, I was in a position and I wanted to be in the top position. I wanted to be in that executive director seat.
Mhm.
And a superior told me, you will be ready for that probably in about 10 years. And I remember thinking, like, I'm more qualified than you are, right? So
Yep.
we get Black people into these positions and then we break down their confidence about their readiness to do more. Tell us a little bit about what you think on that.
Um, those phrases are barriers, it shouldn't be on, readiness or it should be on, can they lead a team? Can they manage projects? Can they communicate effectively? Can they solve problems? All those should be identified by measurable competencies instead of, using certain language and we know what that really means. So, uh, those are, objective measures that should be the questions and shouldn't be the latter. So uh,
Hmm.
I think that, it's being intentional and establish relationships with leadership that we don't have most of the time. Most of the time, others have that relationships and getting opportunities there sometimes are not deserved. So that's my
Hmm.
take on that.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. Yep.
you
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to share that I think that in looking at that as you use some terms and phrases, I think
Hmm.
it's important to consider like how are we defining it, right?
Hmm.
Because if different groups are socialized or programmed to see a certain image when those things come up, such as executive presence or a certain fit as it relates to culture, then you have to ask yourself the question, well, what does that image look like? Right?
Hmm.
Because it may not look like what we're used to, the traditional, male all-American look that we're used to.
Hmm.
It continues to change. And as diversity continues to grow, we see that it looks different in different contexts. So of course we need to consider that. How is that actually defined? Does it have a face? If there's a face that we're associating with it, how do we deconstruct that so that when people are coming through the door, when the recruitment does enhance, are we able to see those qualities, as Terrence said, whether you're actually able to perform and do the job, or
Hmm.
whether it's about an image that the corporation or company wants to maintain?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And many of us have been taught over the span of our careers to be twice as good. Sometimes that shows up as working twice as hard, right? Longer hours, being a high performer. But we know that strong performance alone has not guaranteed mobility for our workforce, especially when bias is at play. So Black professionals may consistently exceed expectations. They may even be the people leading the initiatives, coming up with the innovation and the new strategies, but are still overlooked for that advancement. What do you say to Black professionals who are trying to work their way to opportunity? Sometimes, that might pan out, but many times it doesn't. How do we show up when those are the conditions that are before us?
Well, so I'll go here. I think I looked at some of the information that you shared before in prepping for this, and I looked at the sponsorship versus mentorship dichotomy, right? So mentorship says that someone is actually helping guide you, as you matriculate, whether you're new to executive leadership, you're new to the C-suite level, but sponsorship is a little bit different. And I think when it comes to sponsorship, I think some of that the responsibility is on both sides. I think we should certainly have individuals who are willing to be a sponsor, to bring your name up when the conversation happens about opportunities, someone who can advocate for you. But I think it also, puts some of the responsibility on us as individuals who are attempting to grow, put ourselves out there, network more, to create more than just the performance side of it. But now we have a social currency that we can also apply in the workplace, right? So it doesn't mean that you assimilate and become a different person, but it means that you are utilizing that social side of it. Because if you're not coachable, right, people work for people. If you're not likable, not that you're pandering to anything, but understand that you're in an environment where you're not just leading people that look like you may be leading others, you may be leading so many different people as it relates to diversity. So it's important to expand yourself in that way. So when the conversation does happen, when the opportunities are availing themselves, then you put yourself in a better position because you've not only gotten the education side or you performed well, something that's measurable on the metric side, but you've also put yourself in a position from a networking standpoint where a person can go from being just a mentor to then becoming a sponsor when they are able to speak your name in the room.
I love that you shared that because too often and listen, honestly, we're telling people to show up as your true selves, right? Like to rest in the power of who you are. Don't conform, don't assimilate. But I think in many cases that's being misinterpreted to believe that proximity to power does not matter. Right? Like we so busy standing on our business
Right.
and being unapologetic in who we are that we don't understand that it's all somewhat of a game that you play to achieve advancement. What do you think, Terrence?
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. One of the things that I did before I became director, I made myself available to the board. Um, I, spoke to every single person, asked them what do they do and made my name, available in those rooms. So when I became, when the opportunity came to apply for the director position, oh, we know Terrence. He's been around. He's been asking questions. His work ethic has been good as well too, and he volunteers in doing things when he doesn't have to. So it just putting yourself in position, and like you said, um, um, playing the game. You know, it's not pandering. It's understanding the room, understanding the situation, understanding where you can gain information and access from. So when you are in those rooms, you are ready and prepared to answer those questions that come or deliver. If they ask you, "Hey, Terrence, can you deliver this for us? We need this." Yes, because I was in those rooms and I got the access to the information and made myself, available. So it just putting yourself in
Yeah.
position. So
And I think we don't give enough credit to, you mentioned social capital.
yes.
So we're talking about how hard we work, how much we know
Hmm.
Black women are the most educated demographic right now in the United States.
Yeah.
We know that our work ethic traditionally, I can't speak for
Hmm.
everybody in our community, but traditionally our work ethic has been impressive. But a lot of times advancement is not decided in the workplace. It is decided, the old adage that the business decisions are made on the golf course or
Absolutely.
at the temple or at the church house or at the daycare or at the private school or whatever the case is. It really is very much relational. And a lot
Yes.
of times, it's not pandering, but a lot of times we're not invited to those social settings we're not included in those social settings where those decisions and relationships are most built. I never forget, you remember the movie The Pursuit of Happiness that Will Smith
Yes,
played in? And do
yes.
you remember when he had to travel all that distance to the
Hmm.
boss's home, like it was out in wherever it was, like where the
Hmm.
mansions were or whatever else, and he was able to endear himself to him that way and went
Yes.
to the baseball game and those kind of things. So what do you say to Black professionals who either can't access that kind of social, proximity, or feel like we so busy standing on our laurels that we shouldn't have to, and so therefore we don't.
I would say for the ones that, because I have had to coach a couple of my peers on standing on business because they always tell them standing on business. Well, I tell them all the time, you're limiting yourself, standing on business, because you're capping yourself because you you want access to um, the next level, um, but you don't want to get receive the information as far as okay, all right, I don't want to meet with uh, the CEO because he's just going to see me as another worker, or I'm not going to seem like being a goody two shoes and be a so-called bootlicker. Some people say, um, and putting themselves in position. And I said it's not about that. I tell them that if you there's two parts to it. It's you're going to have to sacrifice. There's some sacrifices you're going to have to make. I know when I first started, um, I was well underpaid, but I knew what the goal was in the long run. That if I do this, if I sacrifice this right now, in the long run, this is what I'll make. And if I just stay the course, play the game, establish relationships, that I'll be able to complete my goal. So it's just you know not limiting yourself. And of course, you're going to get no's, but don't let those no's get in your way. Step around those no's. That's what I've received more no's than yeses.
Mhm.
So it's just, getting around those no's, sacrificing and to get to where you want to be in your career.
Now, I want to bring up a concept that's not in the notes, but I tend to go a little left, so y'all go with me, all right?
Mhm.
We've prefaced this conversation as if we're talking about white hierarchy.
Yes.
But I work for a, Black-led, Black integrated organization, and I will tell you that sometimes when there's Black leadership in place, especially in white spaces, it's
Hmm.
just as hard for Black professionals to achieve advancement when Black people are the decision maker, right?
Hmm.
So as we talk about those social spaces, it's not
Hmm.
just about putting your standing on business and, deciding whether you need to put yourself in white spaces. It is a
Hmm.
decision about whether you're going to put yourself in powerful spaces. I'll
Mhm.
tell you, I had something planned for a few weeks from now, and one of my ABC board members texted me the other day and invited me to something that they're having at their home. And I was like, I got to cancel what I had to go because that's hierarchy, right? And
Yes.
I think I
Yes.
worry sometimes that the younger generation, it's not about standing on business against white supremacy. It's sometimes we lock ourselves out of power proximity.
Yes.
What do we have to say about that?
I would certainly say I think oftentimes there can become a misnomer that there are scarcity within the opportunities, right? That there's only one seat at a time for someone or a person of color to hold or occupy. So to the point that you made, I think it is important to bridge that gap. Whereas sometimes if it is, African American leadership that you're saying you're attempting to navigate,
Mm.
sometimes you'll hear this. It depends on which age group you're in. Maybe you're told to wait your turn,
Mhm.
or in the reverse, it's you've been in the seat for too long,
Mhm.
right? Instead of utilizing that as you just explained, Mr. Thornton, to bridge that gap. It's an opportunity for you to develop those relationships because not only are you able to share something upward, but others who have been in the positions who have had opportunities to learn and gain through so much experience, they can pour so much into you so that when your opportunity does come, you can take off and flourish. right? So I think it's a balance. It's a balance between not maybe wanting to run too fast, but also realizing that, hey, this is an opportunity for me to learn from others who have been in this position or who have it. I've heard a lot from other executive leaders. I'll just say for the executive leadership that we have here at the commission, he's brought up being in a circle of friends or a circle of influence of other leaders, who can actually speak to some of the challenges and some of the areas that we need to develop in, because sometimes we don't have that network, others who have sat in those positions. So instead of continuing to say, hey, I just want to get it out of the mud, I just want to pull myself up by my own bootstraps, connect with others who have been in positions that you aspire to sit in. And sometimes bridging those opportunities will, help you to navigate. You don't have to make the same mistakes that they made, right? You can learn from things and develop. And then once your opportunity comes, you can flourish.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the psychological and the humanity toll that it takes on Black professionals when you're in a job. It seems like the goal keeps moving further and further, right? As you're trying to achieve promotion or to grow your career. We talk about being burnt out, feeling disengaged, starting to not bring your best self to the workplace, and then you perpetuate all of the reasons why they weren't promoting you anyway, right? Like you give them what they ask for, having frustration as you watch other people grow in their careers. And let's talk about the self-doubt that it creates. Have either of you experienced a situation in work where you thought you should have been able to move forward sooner and it created any confidence issues or otherwise?
I would say yes. Many years ago, when I was working in public safety, and I wanted to be, a sergeant. So, I made sure, I met all my quotas, make sure I did everything I was supposed to do. And when promotion time came, I was overlooked. I said, okay, well, next time I'll make sure I'll do even better. So next time I said, okay, I did even better. Got overlooked again. I said, okay, all right. Now I'm starting to feel like, okay, no matter what I do, no matter how perfect I am at my work, they're just not going to see me. So what I did was, um, since I knew this is where my cap is going to be here, I'm not going to let them hinder me. So I'm going to pivot, and then I'm going to, see where else where my skill sets can be an asset to someone else or another company. But I didn't let it. At first, I had self-doubt. I was like, okay, well, I know I'm good enough. What is it that I'm not going? I even did a self-assessment. Okay, is there something that I'm lagging that I need to work on? So I even did the self-assessment test where, hey, I found out that I was a Democratic leader. So, and I used that to say, you know what, I'm going to shine my light in another. So I rerouted my career, and now I'm in workforce development where I'm shining. So it's just recognizing, okay, sometimes there is a cap, and there is going to be some places where you're not going to have that access to. So don't let that hinder you, and use your skill sets to even improve your skill sets to give them to somewhere else, so you can pivot if you need to pivot, or go into the same industry where somewhere else where they need your skill sets, where they've been looking for someone like you. So it's just just having the mindset of, okay, all right, you can have your moment. All right, I feel down. All right, now it's time to pivot. So
Mhm.
Right. I think that's an amazing testimony, because for me as a man of faith, my faith tells me that my gift will make room for me. So I know that as I've developed over the years, I knew that whatever gift that God gave me was not just relative to one space.
Mhm.
Right. And I think that oftentimes, yes, we should certainly, fight and advocate for ourselves if we believe we deserve an opportunity, but also keeping in mind that you're developing in one place, but God may have a whole nother seat ready for you. And so I think that continuing to prepare, success comes when opportunity meets preparation. And so if we continue to prepare, again, as Terrence just said, some places may not see, the value that you can add. but then you become a resource in a place where you can help even more people. Because I was also in the Maryland Judiciary with being a commissioner. So if you're in public safety, Terrence, you're locked into certain places at certain times, right? But now you can now cast your net even wider, and you can help affect so many other people because that gift that you had was not just for public safety, it was for something else. And so I think if we encourage one another, not only within our community, but even folks outside of our community, and sometimes, yes, there are systemic issues as to why we don't advance, but then sometimes we have to also keep our options open because there may be other opportunities that are certainly available for us if we just continue to prepare.
Right, that's a
So I
good
want to
word.
look at some of the questions in the chat, and I want to work backwards a little bit because we talked about building a network of other leaders that can help, pull you up, maybe even help you work through in a peer way your challenges as a leader, help give you that strategic advice. So this question says, what strategies have been most effective in building a strong professional network and opening doors to leadership opportunities? What do you guys think?
I would say networking. Network as much as you can. I go across the country as much as I can and network with as many as people as I can because I've had so many doors open for me from simply going to conferences, going to seminars, going to summits, meeting people that you never. Yes, networking is key. So just networking
Well,
can.
what does that look like? Networking it
Oh,
sounds like something, but what does it
okay.
mean?
So, for instance, telling someone who may be in the same field as you, just to say, Ryan. You're still in you're not in public safety anymore, correct?
No, I'm with the Commission on Civil Rights
Right.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ryan may go to a bunch of civil rights or summits or conferences and meet up and meet up with other leaders that says, okay, this is what I want to do in the community. Is this something that you're doing, or is there more resources that you have that you can provide to me? And then we can exchange numbers, and they have access to someone that you've probably been trying to get access to that you didn't have access to. So it's access to access to access. So it's opening doors that you didn't have access to before. So that's what the importance of networking is from. I've I remember I went to the conference in Phoenix a couple months ago, and trying to get in contact with the National Workforce Development Board and some things that I want to do for our program, but I didn't have the information or the access. And I met with other workforce development leaders. I was able to get access to that information, and now I've brought these resources back to where I'm working, and now I'm going to be implementing some things into my program from the networking that I've been doing and growing our program because CivilWorks is one of the biggest nonprofit workforce development programs in Baltimore City, and that's from networking and getting access to resources that I didn't have on my own.
Right?
I would certainly say, and I've learned this myself, don't look at networking as just transactional.
Mm-hmm.
So I can build a relationship with someone, and I'm not even thinking about necessarily what they can do for me or what I can do for them. We just connect and we build a relationship. We find out that we have some commonality, right, as it relates to our professional lives, personal lives. And then it may come 5-10 years down the line where an opportunity opens up, whether it's through consultant work or someone just sharing with you there's an opportunity that might fit your resume. But seeing opportunities of just building with people, whether it's through your social organizations, if you're in a fraternity, sorority, right? If you are joining, no different than panelists and Mr. Thornton, if you have the quest to join boards and be a part of things, getting involved in the community, volunteering, those are opportunities to meet people, and you just never know where you all can maybe meet and bridge an opportunity down the line. But it's not necessarily a transactional networking piece. It's saying, hey, I know that I have certain things that are in my purview. I'm going to go to this networking event, or hey, when I go out, I'm not going to use it just as an opportunity just to have a drink and have fun. Hey, maybe this is an opportunity to bring my business cards with me, right? To share with people, because you just never know when those opportunities can avail themselves.
I love that you brought up serving on boards and like serving organizations from a community standpoint, because I think too many times we expect opportunities to just drop in our laps and we're not strategic enough about like charting our professional course and deciding where we want to be and then like creating pathways to get there. And sometimes a pathway to workplace advancement can be through your volunteerism, either with the organization for whom you're volunteering or who else is there on the board with you, volunteering with you, or just gaining extra skill sets and resume experience and those kind of things. And so I love that you brought that up because too often people don't consider, when you see people who have gotten to where you want to be, right? Like they're in the CEO seat or in the director seat, C-suite positions. A lot of times people, even though they say they want mentorship and sponsorship, they don't consider what those people have done because not everybody is through nepotism or through, some people have worked their way and strategized their way into those positions. And a lot of times people don't consider what that strategy might look like. What do you say about that? And then I want to talk about the question in the chat about what do you do when nepotism exists?
Yeah, I had to do a reality check for myself because I was, serving communities, with Civilworks, serving the communities that, that I work in. Then I had to think, you know what? I don't even serve my own community. I need to get myself together. So
Mm,
I joined the board of directors for my community, and because there are lots of opportunities to help develop resources in your own neighborhood. Then you can, like you said, get access to resources that you normally don't get when you volunteer and things like that. So that's very important, very important.
mm.
So it was a reality check for myself. So I said, you know what, this doesn't make any sense. I need to volunteer and get involved in my own community.
Yeah. Ryan, strategy that you've used?
Yeah, so for me, definitely just not being afraid to initiate those conversations. I had a great opportunity during an internship years ago with the Office of the Public Defender. I met an attorney, a public defender. He was since passed. His name was Alvin Alston, but he was very instrumental. Just being an intern at the time, I was just maybe to the conversation we're speaking to, just one of very few African Americans who get to intern there. And some of that was an opportunity to speak to him. So my name is brought up maybe in another place where there are others who later down the line, they can actually help assist or maybe speak toward you, or maybe you go to another event and someone shakes your hand. So they know that, oh, you're connected to someone who's doing something positive, right? Those are small gestures that sometimes make you stand out. And so I do. I mean, I think I agree with what Terrence is saying. I think I do need to get more active as well. Sometimes we stick in our silos, but getting out there, getting involved, whether it's through volunteer opportunities, to your point, Mrs. Thornton, or finding other ways through just asking the people that are sitting in positions that you aspire to be in. How did you get to that point? What did you do along the way? How did you help build out your resume? And I think a lot of that can certainly assist.
Yeah. So this whole nepotism thing, I have my own thoughts about this, right? Like people are going to be in positions of influence, power, leadership, and they are going to advantage people who look like them, who are related to them, who are in the same community circles. And that, I mean, that's like tale as old as time. The question is, our focus on trying to shift and change that, like build what some people would say better plantations, right? Like make the white spaces work for us instead of our focus on what happens when Black leaders get in place. Why don't we employ those same practices? Why don't we disproportionately advantage people who look like us and who are in our community and who serve in faith with us and who know us personally? Why don't we do that as much? And what could it look like if we were committed to serving our community the way the other ethnicities and races and communities do theirs?
I would say certainly, and I'll say that just from an enforcement standpoint to really make it more, personal to what I've seen. I think when folks are in opportunities, I think there is a great balance that needs to be kept in mind, right? Because sometimes sometimes we put that pressure on ourselves that because you look like me, that you immediately owe me an opportunity, or you immediately are responsible for my growth and my opportunities. And I think, again, we have to balance that because of the expectation, to the point that you made earlier. Folks feel like they have to run twice as fast, jump twice as high just to get opportunities. And so once they do, they're working twice as hard just to prove themselves when they're in those seats. All the while also carrying that burden of saying, hey, I'm also tasked with the responsibility to try to help make a way for others who look like me. So I think we should give each other some grace, because when we do get in opportunities, we had that battle, right? We're battling, proving ourselves, showing that we can show up and do a good job, unfortunately, but also noting that we have a responsibility to not just do it one way. There are a number of ways for people to lead and also help to create pathways for others who are coming behind us. I think it doesn't look one way. So I think we need to also give each other grace with that. It may look one way for one person, but it may look totally different for another who is a person of color in a position of leadership.
Nah, Ryan, we ain't got no time for grace. We gotta I'm listening to you, and I know it, and I agree, fundamentally, right? And legally and structurally with what you're saying. But at some, and this is just my opinion, and I told you we had the space to disagree, is
Right.
that if we don't lean into, and of course, where people are qualified and eligible and all the things, but showing deference to raising people within our own community, we're always going to have this disproportionate level of advancement, because when Black people get into decision-making positions, too often we're the only one there, right? And we are carrying the Black tax in the weight of our whole community and using that position of power for ourselves, but not to bring others along. So I get it. I do get it, but I just want to put that out there too. So what are the strategies? Like, what should corporations be doing to think differently about making sure that their Black talent is respected, that it has the same opportunity, that, there's pipelines to leadership opportunity, that it's not tokenized, that we don't build these workplace structures where only one Black person can move up and others then can't. What should workplaces be considering to do a little bit better?
I would say one thing they can do better is um, actually meet with, like, I would say the mid-level managers, or supervisors. Um, did you mean as far as the frontline workers, like the entry level?
No, I mean, like, just corporate, when we think of organizational culture that keeps Black people
Uh-huh.
from away from promotion, away from opportunity, the
Right.
policies,
hmm
who's on the
Gotcha.
decision-making teams that get to
Gotcha.
decide who gets promoted, who gets to
Right.
grow their career.
Right.
What should organizations be doing to, of course, eliminate the
hmm
bias and eliminate some of the status quo as it
Yeah.
relates to not giving
Yeah.
opportunity to Black professionals?
Um, they should create, one of the things that we've done to help with that, they should create a senior leadership board, which is diversified with not just no white, Black. It should be, a melting pot of different cultures, so they can get understanding of, okay, not just one culture uh, can be successful. You know, we have many people that are successful within the Black community, many people that are successful within the Native American community, all the communities. It has to be a melting pot in the leadership. It can't be just one, demographic, because if it's just one demographic, all they're going to see is, okay. I mean, especially when they're the majority, they're only going to see, what people that are like them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's um, to the point where it's, um, even to the point where sometimes they may not even think about it. They just so naturally being the majority, and subconsciously they just see, okay, this white person, okay, we're going to promote them because we know them, we can feel comfortable with them. We know what the culture is. We not be comfortable with someone that may be, in the black culture because they may respond differently in ways to certain things or be more assertive than others. Because a lot of times we get typecast and then the angry black man, the angry black woman, when we're just being assertive about certain things. So just understanding the different cultures.
How do we make it less subjective? Is
Mm.
there a rubric? Can we judge people on skill set,
Yeah.
on work accomplishment, on performance in a way
Yes.
that takes the racial injustice out of it?
Mhm.
Ryan?
Yeah.
I would certainly say that I think that's very difficult because the word that this whole conversation is centered
Mhm.
around is equity,
Mhm.
right? And just kind of doing some soft research before this, there's a wonderful book that I came across named "The First, the Few, the Only," and one of the chapters it talks about the job within the job. And I think Terrence, you kind of spoke to it a little bit. What we have to consider is that when people of color, in particular, I think we brought this up earlier, for women of color, because that's the demographic that this book specifically speaks to, we're talking about the technical side of it, as Mrs. Thornton just raised, but then we talk about the other side to what Terrence spoke about, how you show up, to be softer, whereas your assertiveness is considered being aggressive, right? So I guess understanding that when you see different people in these spaces, know that they do come with different experiences, different things from their culture that they experienced that lends to how they move and matriculate through the company or the corporation. You shouldn't look at them through a lens that you may be used to, but look at them for what it actually is, because that is a tremendous task, the overhaul of that part of the job within the job, that you not only show up to perform and perform the essential functions of your job, but you also have the weight of everything else that comes with it, whether it's, as Mrs. Thornton said, the black tax, the weight of it being on your shoulders to represent essentially your entire community. Different holidays that happen in your corporation, people are looking to you for your response on Juneteenth, or a Carmelo Anthony case, or there's a different environment that you feel when some of these things happen. Those are some of the more traumatic things that people carry with them into the workplace that gives them even more stress beyond just the job itself. So I would say certainly looking toward it from an equity standpoint to say, hey, certain people that are ascending and promoted into these positions, we also have to keep in mind what they have to endure when they do get into these positions as well. That, hey, I'm looking at it from a metric standpoint of how you produce, right? The production side of it, but also seeing the human side of it. That it's not just a performance currency, but also the social currency as well.
Mm. So we talk about allies, right? And I think, extra community allies, but also how we can advocate for one another in these spaces. What does that look like? What does it look like to have power and to share it? Either if you're, white or another ethnicity, or you're black and have it. What does that look like in order to help other people advance? We talk about sponsorship. Sponsorship is a big thing. Sponsorship sometimes means you're availing not just your guidance and insight, it's your money. It is you are literally stepping aside to give someone else an opportunity to shine. What does that look like and how can we get there?
I think recognizing the talent, um, first recognizing the talent, and then um, coaching the talent, um, and not only like you said sponsoring, but coaching and giving them somewhat of the blueprint of, okay, this is how I did it. This is so you won't make the same mistakes that I've made, so you will have a better opportunity to get access to um, your goal and what you want to do. Um, but the most important thing um, is recognizing the talent first, not just because we can't just say, okay, because they're black. we got to make sure that they're actually meeting the goals and the metrics and actually put it in the work. Because a lot of times I get it a lot as well too. Can you help me? Can you help me move up in my career? And I ask the questions, have you put together SMART goals? If you haven't, I can help you put those SMART goals together so we can see where where your strengths and your weaknesses are and your skills. Do a skills gap analysis. So that way we can help put you in position so you can be more successful.
Mm-hmm. So as we start to wrap up a little bit, because we're talking about like coaching, supporting, recognizing talent and all of that, how would you suggest that Black professionals who are bumping up against lack of opportunity in their current role, how would you suggest that they immediately navigate that? And what would the long-term strategy be for those people?
Um, I would certainly say in investing in yourself. The opportunities are, I wouldn't use the word limitless, but it almost is. I think even with this organization, Associated Black Charities, I'm so thankful to see that so many opportunities are presented to the community to learn about so many different things, right? That you are putting the professionals and the subject matter experts in front of people for them to learn, whether it's a workshop, a seminar, some other type of talk where people can learn, the resources that are available. I would certainly say do that alongside some of the things that we talked about today, positioning yourself with others who have the experience, right? Because those opportunities are there. I think from the previous question, corporations, organizations can certainly help with that by investing in those people, into that talent, where it's not just, hey, I'll put you in a position, sink or swim, but I'm also invested in your success, because we realize that succession is inevitable, right? And what better position would you put yourself in for those who are the next generation of leaders within your set organization, companies, agencies, that you're actually investing in their development. So I think it goes hand in hand, invest in yourself, and then position yourself and put yourself in positions and opportunities to be able to receive some of that information and to lend itself as it relates to your benefit from a lot of those resources.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts, Terrence?
Yeah, this is what I used to use all the time. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you're, like I said before, if you're at a peak where you feel yourself not growing anymore, get uncomfortable with learning new skills, or pivoting to another skill set that you have that you haven't used yet. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that way it'll set yourself up. And like Brian said, it sets yourself up to invest in yourself, learning more about who you are, self-selfing. I have this. It's called the SAFE principles. It's called, self-assess, hold yourself accountable, do the follow through, and then if you do the follow through, you earn your keep. So SAFE
I like
principles.
that.
Yep.
I like that. So first of all, I want to thank both of you for joining us. And as we give our closing remarks, I want to go back to what we talked about, like standing on business. Now, normally, I am a proponent for standing on business, right? Like showing up unapologetically, making sure we do things for the culture and all those kind of things. But I do think that we might be dealing with a generation of people that have an imbalance between doing that and showing up in ways that will progress your career in a system that maybe hasn't been designed for our advancement or even our safety, but the system still exists, right? And so I always tell people when I mentor them, you have to make a decision. You have to decide what you want out of these experiences. If you want promotion, if you want the paycheck, if you want, this type of opportunity, then you're going to yield this way. If you're okay, standing on business and in authenticity, but maybe living a life that doesn't come with that same advantage, then yield this way. So I would love for you all to close out today by just offering some wisdom in the room here for professionals who are deciding between working in systems to try to make them better, right? And then you have this whole new movement of people who are saying hell no, no more. We're going to start our own businesses. We're going to, tough it. We're going to do it our own way. Give some advice to those two groups of people, and then we'll close there.
I would certainly say that it's not just one way. I would say that we all have our piece to contribute to this great thing that we're talking about here, right? So I think that it is important. I think this day and age, I think I saw a recent statistic where millennials, or I believe it might even be Gen Zs, they are leading the way in terms of entrepreneurship, even more than many of the generations that came before them. And I think that is great. I think it is important. But I think if we're also going to have an opportunity to have a seat at the table when we talk about politics, when we talk about the systemic organizations that do affect so many things, when we talk about healthcare, it's nothing wrong with pursuing those opportunities, continuing your education, being a part of the corporate model. Because if we're not in these spaces, how can we affect the change? We certainly can protest, we certainly can boycott, we certainly can cancel. But if we're not in positions, if we're not on the boards, if we're not shareholders, if we're not equity stakeholders, then our voices are not being heard, right? We're talking about it. We may even get some time on our local media channels. But when we have the opportunity to be at the table, and we have a lot of that training through the corporate structure, through learning, through matriculating and advancing the old-fashioned way, so to speak, it puts enough of us and it creates a balance. I certainly encourage entrepreneurship, those who do it. I believe most people in this day and age, you need multiple streams. So even people that are corporate, they have side hustles and businesses. But I think we all have to contribute in our own way. We need to continue. I think the old adage in the past was the talented 10th. We need people that are the attorneys, the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, while we also need the business owners, the grassroots organizations, the leaders, those who are in the community. Because if we don't have representation across the board, then we'll continue to miss the mark with that. You'll have folks that are speaking for us rather than us being able to speak for ourselves.
Terrence?
Yeah, awesome. What I would say to the young professionals that are, mission aligned and want to improve their, professional careers, stay the course. Always continue to learn. Always seek putting yourself in rooms that you're uncomfortable in, so you can learn from that aspect. Like we said, networking to establish relationships. I promise you, establishing relationships will take you farther than any metric or goal that that your boss have in store for you. To the young generation that like to push the system, I would say, in order for that to have power, have legs to stand on, I would say you will have to establish yourself first. As Ryan said, establish yourself in the workplace first. Become a manager. And then now you're that manager. Now you can say, okay, I want to create an equity council. So, because these are the things that we think that are not, being done right within the community or within the workplace. Now that you have that power and within as a manager or supervisor, then you can say, okay, I want to fight against the system and use that as a access point to, make your point and that we're tired of this. We're not going to pick this anymore. So.
Absolutely. Now, before we close today, I would be remiss, Ryan, if I didn't give you an opportunity to let the viewers and the people watching the playback know where they can go if they experience workplace discrimination, what the recourse is.
Certainly. And thank you so much for that opportunity. Again, I do have the pleasure of serving with the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, the leading civil rights agency in our great state. So you certainly can do that if you go to our website, mccr.gov. That's a website where it'll give you all the information in terms of how to initiate a complaint, even if it's getting information. We certainly have a great education and outreach department that has partnered with a number of organizations locally and across our state. So that's one place to start, but also start with some of your local organization as well. Mrs. Thornton and I, we had the opportunity to be on the Baltimore County Human Relations Commission panel not too long ago, and that's another one. So there are great places locally. You have the state level, and then the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission as well, which is on the federal level, is another space. And I would also say definitely use an opportunity to consult an attorney as well. There are a number of attorneys that will take, your consultation free at first, and listen to your case or listen to your specific scenario, find out what it is, and use the human resources department as well at your respective workplaces. They're obligated to help you navigate some of these issues as well, right? So if you're not at a place where you want to go externally, use some of the internal resources that you have as well.
So speaking of that, we'll be back for the next Equity at Work conversation where the topic will be workplace punishment for calling out racism. And for Associated Black Charities, I am Chrissy Thornton. Thank you both so much, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.